Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about the Sun ingress in Aquarius. This is the first video of a series that I'm going to release throughout the year, following the path of the Sun through the zodiac signs. So first off, I'd like to introduce to the season with this image, an image by Edward Robert Hughes, which I really like, Night with Her Train of Stars. And this image, in my opinion, is very beautiful, especially because it represents, at least in my eyes, Archangel Gabriel. Now, if you're familiar with anthroposophy, you know that winter is ruled by the Archangel Gabriel. And of course, in astrology, the tropical signs, they follow the seasons. So we can understand winter dividing it into the three zodiac signs that fall under this season: Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Now, Aquarius specifically is the heart, the very heart of winter. And we're reaching here a point where the energy of the season stabilizes. And we're going to see what this means by looking at some pictures in order to really tune in the energy, the vibration of the season of Aquarius specifically. Now, what's Aquarius? Aquarius is an air sign, a fixed air sign, meaning that the quality of the light here is special. Air and light, in fact, are intertwined, especially in anthroposophy. We know that the light ether is a reflection of the air element. And as you can see in the picture here, we have a dawn, specifically because Aquarius can be understood as the dawn of the year. In fact, even though winter is usually represented as a cold and dark season, it's not so dark as it may seem, because as we move on throughout the year now, days are getting longer, and of course light is coming back. And Aquarius, being a sign of air and light, is precisely a moment of the year when light is getting back. So we have this image of light, this image of dawn, breaking into the darkness of winter, bringing change, bring about this change through light, through revelation. So what's the quality of this light? It is white. It is a pure white light that is inviting us to embrace this process of purification of the astral body specifically. In fact, the white, the color of the snow, here we have the snow reflecting sunlight, as you can see, is a representation of this purity, which also is represented by the white lily. Archangel Gabriel is usually represented holding in his hands a white lily, which is a symbol for the astral body. And the lily is white specifically because it represents the forces of the astral body purified. And so here we have the peak of the Gabriel season, and we have the peak of the purification of these forces, receiving a bright, pure light coming from the stars. In fact, the zodiac sign of Aquarius can be understood by looking at this picture, a picture of the starry night. It's very different from the energy that we get from the opposite Leo. As you know, Leo is a zodiac sign strongly connected to the sun, the star, right? It is the king, the undisputable power. Here, the situation is very different since humanity is represented as this starry sky. We're all equal, we're all the same, and for this reason, the zodiac sign is strongly connected to equal rights movement and bringing a revolution. But this revolution starts with the light, with the dawn of the new year, so to speak. And during February, we find the festival of Candlemas, or the pagan festival of Imbolc, happening on the 1st or 2nd of February. And here we have the blessing of the candles. We have this image of tiny little candles lit together as a reflection of these lights coming from the cosmos. And of course, it's a festival of purity, especially in Christianity, when in February, usually we have this moment where we are supposed to start a purification process approaching Easter, right? So let's take now a look to this chart that represents the ingress of the sun in Aquarius. So as you can see, this chart is domiciled for Central Europe time in Rome. So please ignore the astrological houses. And as you can see, the sun, as it moves into Aquarius, features a conjunction with Pluto, specifically a separating conjunction, meaning that as the sun is moving out from the darkness of winter, it is leaving behind, so to speak, Pluto as well. And Pluto is a very challenging planet since it represents the shadows of the human being. My way of understanding the generational planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, is that they are basically a representation of the astral world, of the anima mundi, of the collective unconscious, according to the three members of the human being: thinking, feeling, and willing. And with Pluto, instead of willing, we should rather say instincts, because of course, most of us cannot reach with our consciousness such depths, such deep levels. And so there we find the darkest shadows of humanity lurking and waiting for us for redemption, right? So this conjunction is telling us that in some way, specifically, we are leaving these shadows behind to embrace a process of purification, which is definitely appropriate for the season. Now, to have a better understanding of this ingress, we need to look at Saturn, being Saturn the ruler of Aquarius. Now, as you can see, Saturn in this chart is featuring a conjunction with Venus, and Saturn is still in Aquarius. It is going to move in Pisces in March, but it is still in Aquarius. And of course, in Aquarius, the inner dimension of Saturn, which is definitely about silence and contemplation, is appropriate to embrace this process. That on top of that, we can enjoy due to the presence of Venus. Venus, she's the goddess of love, the goddess of beauty, the goddess of pleasure. And Venus in Aquarius, she is enjoying freedom and detachment. Things that are very useful in order to step back and to contemplate our shadows so that we can move towards the heart of winter, developing our freedom, developing our spiritual being as the part of us that can grant us freedom. Now, this is just one side of the chart. The other is definitely represented by the sextile between the Sun and Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries is bringing forces that are going to set things in motion. So things are going to start again this month. And this is also represented by the fact that we don't have any planets retrograde. And this is another indication that things are going to flow more naturally. And on top of that, we know that now Mars has turned direct again, and Mars is making a sextile with this Jupiter as well. So this is another hint that is suggesting us that a new beginning is waiting for us. So on one hand, we need to detach from our shadows. We need to step back and contemplate them so that we can become more free from them. And on the other, we are invited to new beginnings. So now I'd like to take a step back and to look at this chart from a different angle. Now, from the perspective of astrosophy, now we are looking at the chart not only taking the tropical signs into account, but we're also going to take a look at the constellations. In astrosophy, mainly we use the astronomical zodiac, but my approach is using the three zodiacs. I'm going to leave a link to one of my articles if you are curious to know more about my approach, the approach of the three zodiacs that was introduced by Willy Zucker, the founder of astrosophy. So what are we doing when we look at the chart taking constellations into account? It's like going beyond the veil. It's like contemplating a higher dimension, the dimension of the fixed stars that represent the first hierarchy. From an anthroposophical understanding, the constellations are a reflection of the activity of the first spiritual hierarchy, cherubim, seraphim, and thrones. So by looking at the constellations, it's like having an understanding of the spiritual impulses behind what the soul can embrace through the planets and the tropical signs. And as you can see, behind the zodiac sign of Aquarius, we find the constellation of Capricorn. So now we're going to take a look at this constellation in order to understand what it is and what it is basically telling us. Now, in anthroposophy, the constellation of Capricorn has to do with spiritualism and the spiritual hierarchies. And on top of that, it is a specific spiritual impulse that is basically inviting us to step into our an inner dimension to develop a personal relationship, to have personal experiences, direct experience with the spiritual world. And this path can be, in general, it can be called Gnosis, right? When you have first-hand spiritual experiences. Now, this is interesting because in this epoch, we have the tropical sign of Aquarius that is basically receiving this light, this pure white light of concepts, new ideas to bring about change in the world. But this light has a source, and this source is the constellation of Capricorn. Basically, here, the revolution nowadays should be a spiritual evolution. Or to bring about this change, we should connect firsthand with the spiritual world to have these experiences, to get the spiritual intuitions, and to get new concepts that we can develop and express, manifest in the world. Now, let's take a look now at Saturn and Venus at this conjunction. Now, as you can see in the picture here, we have this blue line is the zodiac sign of Aquarius. Starting here, the sun just entered Aquarius in this picture. And then moving on, as you can see behind this area, which is the zodiac sign of Aquarius, we have the constellation of Capricorn with the head and horns here and with the tail. And as you can see, here, Saturn and Venus are in conjunction on the tail of the sea goat. Now, this comes with a specific meaning because we can discern, according to where specifically in the constellation we find the planets, we can interpret with different significations of the constellation what this means. And the sea goat, you can see a picture here of the sea goat. We have the fishtail on one hand, and the upper part of the figure is the goat with the horns. Now, as I mentioned, Capricorn has to do with spiritualism and the spiritual hierarchies. And here in the horns, in the higher part of the animal, we have the higher hierarchies, and as we move down here in the lower part, we find the lower hierarchies, right? And where's men? Mankind is, of course, still in the fishtail, right? Meaning that the sign of Capricorn goes from the depths of our unconscious, this fishtail, to the highest spiritual hierarchy, the highest choir of angels, the seraphim, represented here by the horns. And in fact, in astrosophy specifically, the constellation of Capricorn is definitely connected to the spiritual hierarchy of the seraphim. Now, Saturn and Venus are here in the lowest part, and this reminds us of the Sun-Pluto conjunction, meaning that this detachment, this contemplation that I mentioned, is not only part of the chart because we have the Sun in conjunction with Pluto, but on top of that, we have Saturn in conjunction with Venus in the tail of the animal. So we should detach from our shadows in order to become more aware of our limitations and to create inside of us a space to develop our spiritual and individual relationship with the spiritual world. So contemplation is definitely the first part of the month. It is the keyword describing best the first part of the month. Now, if we take a look at this calendar, starting from the 20th here, we can see that we have the Sun ingress in Aquarius. Immediately after that, we have the first syzygy of the month, the new moon in Aquarius. Moving on the 22nd, we have the conjunction that I just talked about, the Saturn-Venus conjunction perfecting on the 22nd, together with Uranus changing direction, turning direct. So this is very interesting because from the 22nd on, we're going to have all the planets direct, as I mentioned before. And this is, of course, part of this second component of the chart, this setting things in motion, getting things started again. And especially if we look at the 25th with the Sun-Jupiter sextile and the 30th with all these trines that involve very dynamic planets, we can see that immediately after this moment of contemplation, things are start moving again. The most beautiful ingress for this month is Venus entering Pisces, the place of her exaltation. So we have a beautiful Venus here. If we look at February, we see that immediately right after the first days, the first week of the month, we have these squares. We have the Sun-Uranus square here. We have the Venus-Mars square. And the same day, the 5th, we have the second syzygy. We have the full moon in Leo. And this is interesting because there's a difference between Aquarius season in January and in February. February is definitely more dynamic. And on top of that, for all the Valentine's Day enthusiasts, we have on February 15th, right after Valentine's Day, we have the Venus-Neptune conjunction perfecting in Pisces. Of course, this conjunction is extremely beneficial for love and romance, but from a higher perspective, it concerns the art and the relationship that we have with the divine from almost a mystical perspective. And on February 18, as you can see, the sun is entering Pisces, ending Aquarius season for this year. Now let's take a look at the first syzygy, the new moon happening on January 21st. Now, there's not much that we can say here because it's happening the day after the ingress of the sun in Aquarius, and as you can see, we still have the conjunction with Pluto. The conjunction between Venus and Saturn is still happening, and we have this sextile of between Jupiter and the sun still taking place. So basically, this new moon is confirming everything that we just said with the ingress of the sun in the sign. It's definitely more interesting to look at the full moon chart happening on February 5th. So as you can see, we have a couple of squares here between Uranus performing a T-square aspect with both the luminaries and a square between Venus and Mars. Now, first off, we know that Uranus is in Taurus. I discussed about it in my articles, especially during the last eclipses. And the energy of Uranus in Taurus is not only about revolution, but I would say resistance. Resistance towards all the human forces that want to basically to put in danger nature, since Taurus is the zodiac sign of nature herself. And so I would say that one of the main significations of this Uranus is resistance and resistance to change. And this is interesting because if the first part of the month, and with the term month, I'm referring here to the Aquarius season, the transit of the sun towards the zodiac sign of Aquarius. So if the first part was mainly concerned with contemplation and detaching ourselves from our shadows that are lying beneath the surface of our consciousness, here I would say that this new start that we are attempting to make, because things are moving, it is going to find some resistance, definitely. And why is that? In order to understand it, we need to take a look at Venus and Mars, because yes, Mars has turned direct and it is gaining momentum, strength, right? Becoming faster and faster. However, if Mars represents our will and where we are going and the way that we use our will, so to speak, to achieve our goals, Venus, the planet of love, is where we are going, because she is attracting us with her promises that are about love and pleasure. So we are attracted towards Venus, hence towards Pisces. And as we know, Pisces is great on a spiritual level, also for artists and creativity. But when it comes to having like a clear idea about where we're going and what we want to do, it can be quite confusing. Meaning that this these new beginnings can be messy, and we can find ourselves resisting to change because we don't really know where we are going yet. So, in my opinion, the best scenario would be first to process our shadows or to detach from them, so to create an inner space in order to become more calm and embracing this purification process that this season is suggesting us to embrace through the forces of Archangel Gabriel on one hand. On the other, we should start listening to ourselves more in order to clear our mind before starting a new project, basically, because things can be confusing, messy, and definitely with Pisces not clear. Now, I'd like to end this video talking about Rudolf Steiner's zodiac virtue of the month. Elena Petrovna Blavatsky gave 12 virtues, 12 zodiacal virtues that Steiner completed by describing the virtue that the first virtue given by Blavatsky develops if we practice it for enough time in our soul. Now, the virtues here are discretion becomes the power of meditation. Now, discretion is a very interesting virtue because it is about withholding inside of us the question, our curiosity, this impulse, this urge to go out seeking for an answer, also sometimes being invasive and not respecting other people's boundaries. And the German original term for discretion here is it comes with another meaning, which is being private or even keeping secrets. So my interpretation of this virtue is that we should be able to hold within us all the astral forces that wants to flow outside in the world of the senses, so that this virtue can become the power of meditation. And what's the power of meditation? Is the energy, or the strength rather, that we need inside of us in order to meditate. And this strength consists, at least in anthroposophical understanding, to retain inside of us images and concepts. It is a force of concentration as well. And so if we fight this tendency within our soul to let astral forces flowing out because they feel this urge, right, to be not discreet, right? If we hold them inside, in time, this ability of holding them inside of us becomes this energy of retention. And so we can really concentrate more on an inner content. And this is what, in my opinion, this power of meditation is about. Now, thanks for watching. This is the first video of a series that I'm going to release throughout the year. Please subscribe to the channel and share this video with friends and family. Hit the like button and do all those things that YouTubers usually say at the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.